In the late afternoon light, the snow of Faldara glowed like silver dust. The air was cold and bright, and the sound of workers repairing broken towers echoed through the city. Evan Carter stepped off the transport platform and looked around with wide eyes. It was his first time in the Northern Kingdom, and everything seemed larger than life. The castles had tall windows that caught the sunlight, and the people wore long coats and warm gloves. Evan was an engineer from the Southern Territories. He had come with a small team sent by his government to help restore the old cities after years of war. The machines that kept Faldara running had been damaged, and now it was Evanes's job to repair them and to teach others how to use new technology. He was not high-ranking or rich, just a talented man who liked solving problems. His hair always fell into his eyes, his gloves were worn out, and his laugh tended to come at the wrong moments. The palace of Faldara was unlike anything he had ever seen. Its halls were filled with light that bounced off marble floors, and every step echoed softly. He felt small walking between the tall pillars, but also curious. He knew he would soon meet the queen herself. He had heard stories Queen Leora of Valdara, a young ruler with steady eyes, in a calm voice who had brought her people through difficult times. She was beautiful, they said, but it was her courage that people admired most. When she entered the grand hall, Evan forgot his prepared speech. She moved quietly, her dress a soft shade of silver that caught the light like frost, looked at him, and for a moment he saw not just a queen but a person who seemed tired yet kind. Behind her stood a few guards and advisors, all watching silently. "You were the engineer from the south," she said. But confident. "Yes, Your Majesty," Evan said quickly. "Evan Carter, at your service. I am here to help your people with the energy systems." She nodded slowly. "We are grateful. The machines have been silent too long." Evan smiled awkwardly. "Machines get moody when ignored," he said before thinking, and her lips curved in a small smile. He hadn't meant to joke in front of a queen, but her expression made the moment lighter. The first meeting went better than he had expected. He showed her and her engineers a small display of a new power core that could warm homes and light streets. But the wind coming through the open windows was sharp and cold. As the queen leaned forward to inspect the glowing core, her shoulders trembled slightly in the chill. Without thinking, Evan shrugged off his heavy coat and stepped closer. "Here, Your Majesty," he said with a grin that tried to hide his nervousness. "You should try Southern craftsmanship. Keeps an engineer alive through half a winter." The hall went silent for a second. The guards stiffened, not sure if the queen would be offended. But Queen Leora only lifted her eyebrows with mild surprise. Then she laughed, quiet and bright, and accepted the coat. "Thank you, Mr. Carter," she said. "Oh, I suspect you are going to regret this." The coat was much too large for her. Sleeves hung past her hands, and the collar almost reached her chin. But when she pulled it closer around her shoulders, her smile softened. "It is warm," she admitted. Evan gave a short nod, trying to act calm. "You can keep it until sunset, Your Majesty. Promise I have built-in tolerance for bad weather." The rest of the demonstration went smoothly, though Evan's fingers were turning purple. When it was over, the queen returned to her chamber, still wearing his coat, saying she would return it later. He thought nothing more of it. That night, Evan stayed in one of the palace's guest quarters. Outside the window, the city lights twinkled under falling snow. He thought about the queen's laughter and how natural it had sounded among all the marble echoes. There was power in her calmness, and something deeply human in her smile. He fell asleep thinking the trip might not be as dull as he had feared. The next morning, Evan woke to a knock on his door. A young attendant handed him a note sealed with the royal emblem. It said simply, "Your coat has found a new duty." He frowned in confusion, but smiled anyway. Maybe it meant the queen liked it. Maybe it meant she would wear it again. He shrugged and went back to work. In the busy courtyard below, workers carried tools, children played in the snow, and someone shouted for more copper wire. Evan rolled up his sleeves and joined them, unaware that his simple joke, the offer of one coat in the cold wood, soon turned into a story remembered by everyone in both kingdoms. The morning bells rang softly across the palace courtyard as sunlight touched the snow. Evan Carter carried his tools and his notebook ready to start another long day of work. He was still thinking about the note the queen had sent to him the day before. It had said, "Your coat has found a new duty." He smiled as he remembered it. He thought she had only made a small joke. When he entered the main hall, he stopped in surprise. The Queen was there, standing with her advisors and soldiers, talking about the repairs in the northern district. She was wearing his coat. Same dark blue coat that had once hung from his shoulders was now around her royal dress. Looked out of place among silk and jewels, but somehow it suited her. Evan tried not to stare, but many others were already whispering. Some of the advisors frowned, clearly unsure what to think. One of them finally spoke, saying, "Your Majesty, should we perhaps bring a cloak that matches the royal attire?" The Queen looked amused. "Thank you, but no," she said. "This coat is warm and strong, and it comes from the hands of a man who builds rather than destroys. That seems fitting for these times." Evan's heart thumped. He had never imagined his silly act of kindness would turn into something people noticed. He wanted to laugh, but also to disappear. The engineers beside him nudged his shoulder and grinned. One whispered, "You just started a new fashion." "Carter," the Queen continued walking through the hall, discussing plans for rebuilding. When she passed by Evan, her eyes met his for a moment. "Good morning, Mr. Carter," she said in a calm tone. "I trust you brought more designs for me to see." He cleared his throat. "Yes, Your Majesty. Several new methods to stabilize the power lines. And perhaps another coat design if you need it." She smiled slightly, then moved on. The people around them laughed quietly, and Evan felt his face grow warm. That day he worked hard to keep his thoughts straight, spent hours fixing broken generators and checking circuits. Yet everywhere he went, people had already heard about the Queen and the coat. Guards at the gates saluted him with teasing grins. Servants in the halls whispered as he passed. Even the children playing in the palace yard shouted, "Look, it's the coat man." Each time he tried to act serious, but inside he found it both funny and confusing. Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the snowy hills, the Queen held an open council meeting. Citizens and workers came to listen to her speak. She stood before them wearing the same coat once again. Her voice carried clear and calm through the cold air. "We stand together now," she said, "to rebuild not just the walls of the city, but the trust between us. This coat I wear is a small thing, given in kindness by one who came to help, not to rule. Let it be a sign that no gesture of goodwill is ever too small to matter." The crowd cheered, and Evan felt something strange in his chest, something proud and light. He had not meant to do anything great. He had only tried to keep someone warm. But now his simple human act had become a story spreading through the kingdom. After the meeting, he stayed behind to collect his tools. The Queen approached him once more, quietly this time. The hall was empty except for a few flickering lamps. "You have caused quite a stir, Mr. Carter," she said softly. "I seem to have done that, Your Majesty." "I hope it has not caused trouble." She shook her head. "Trouble comes from anger and greed, not from kindness." Her fingers brushed the edge of the coat. "It feels strange wearing something that belongs to someone else, but it reminds me that my people and your people are no different. We all get cold. We all want peace." Evan looked at her with a small smile. "Then I suppose I am honored that my old coat helps remind Your Majesty of that." "It does," she said. "And do you know what the ministers said this morning?" I'm almost afraid to ask. "They said I should give it back before the scribes turn it into poetry." Evan laughed. "Then you'd better keep it close. Poets can't resist a good story." The Queen's eyes softened. "Maybe they shouldn't resist this one." She waved lightly and walked away, the coat swirling around her as she disappeared down the corridor. Painters sketched it, citizens talked about it, storytellers added more color each time they told the tale. Some said the coat had magic that kept the Queen safe. Others said it was a symbol of hope. Evan did not argue with any of them, kept working, fixing wires and machines. And when someone asked him about the coat, he would only smile and say, "It's just something I gave her to keep her warm." But even he began to notice that the world felt a little warmer since that day. Snow kept falling softly across the rooftops of Faldara, covering the city in quiet silver. The days had grown calmer now that the repairs were working. Warm light glowed again from houses that had been dark for years. Evan Carter walked through the palace courtyard each morning with his tool bag, feeling proud of what his small team had managed to build. The noise of machines mixed with the laughter of children, and for the first time since arriving, he felt he belonged there. He often saw Queen Leora moving through the corridors surrounded by her guards. She always greeted him with a smile, still wearing his old blue coat. It had become like her second skin. No one in the palace found it odd anymore. They even began calling it the Builder's Coat. Evan could not help smiling when he heard that name. Would never have thought that his simple jacket could become part of royal life. But each time he saw her wearing it, he also felt a strange warmth inside that he could not quite name. It was not pride exactly. It was something deeper and softer. One cold morning, Leora sent a messenger to his workshop and asked if he could join her for supper. He cleaned himself up as best as he could and went to the royal dining room at sunset. The table was long and grand, but only 2 plates were set. The queen greeted him kindly and dismissed the attendants so that they could speak privately. "Mr. Carter," she said gently, "you have worked so hard for my city. Will you sit and eat as a friend, not as an engineer?" He nodded nervously and took his seat. The food was warm stew with fresh bread, the kind of meal that made the cold world outside seem far away. Leora sipped her soup and broke the silence. "When you first gave me this coat, did you imagine I would still wear it?" "Not at all," he said, laughing. "I thought you might return it the same night, perhaps throw it at my head for the lack of style." She smiled, shaking her head. "Style is not important to me anymore. I want only things that feel honest. This coat is honest. It is simple and warm. People look at me wearing it, and they remember that comfort can come from kindness, not from gold or silk." Evan nodded. "Sometimes I miss that thought myself when I am surrounded by machines. They do so much, but none of them can make someone laugh or feel seen." For a while, they spoke about small things. They talked of weather and music, of growing up during the hard years, of the way hope feels when it returns after being gone too long. The queen listened more than she spoke, and Evan found himself relaxing in her company. He realized that she was lonely, even among all her people. After the meal, she walked with him to the high balcony that looked over the city. A slow wind blew from the hills, and lights twinkled below like a field of stars. Leora pulled the coat tighter around her and said, "I sometimes look down there and wonder if they remember I am human. Sometimes I feel like they see only the crown." Evan turned toward her. "Maybe the coat helps them remember," he said quietly. "It tells them that you hurt and laugh and feel the cold, just like they do." She gave him a shy glance. "Then you truly did give me more than just warmth, Mr. Carter." For a moment, they stood in silence, the snow swirling around them. Evan wanted to say something clever, something that would make her laugh again, but the words caught in his throat. Instead, he simply said, "You should keep it as long as you want. It suits you better than it ever suited me." Leora smiled softly. "That is dangerous to say. I might never give it back. Then I'll have to build myself another one," he replied, half joking. "Maybe the next one will be smart enough not to become famous." She laughed, her breath forming small clouds in the winter air, and for a brief instant she did not look like a ruler or a legend, but just another person, slightly amazed by life. Over the following weeks, their friendship grew slowly and naturally. She visited his workshop sometimes, watching him tinker with wires and bolts. He told her stories from his homeland, funny tales of broken engines, late-night repairs, and the stubborn goats that always chewed wiring. She would laugh freely, and the sound of her laughter spread like warmth through the cold halls. People in the palace began noticing the change. The queen seemed lighter, her voice brighter. She spent more time among her workers, asking about their families and listening to their stories. It was as if the old blue coat had softened a wall around her heart. Evan never bragged about his closeness with her. He still bowed and spoke respectfully in public, but in moments when no one else was watching, a quiet understanding seemed to pass between them. They were no longer just a queen and an engineer. It had become something rare to hearts that had found trust after years of living behind duty and steel. Each time Leora walked through the palace gardens, her coat swaying gently behind her, people smiled. Some whispered that she looked happier than ever. Evan, seeing her from a distance, always smiled too, wondering how a single small act from one weary man could change not only his life, but perhaps the heart of a whole kingdom. Snow still fell across the rooftops, though spring was close. Faldara was busy rebuilding its marketplaces and rail lines. The houses glowed again at night, and children played where soldiers once stood guard. Evan Carter watched this change with quiet pride. He had done his part, and the queen had guided her people with calm wisdom. Life was becoming normal again, yet peace always attracted new kinds of storms. One morning, loud voices echoed through the palace. Ministers and noblemen had gathered, and many looked upset. Queen Leora stood at the end of the long hall, still wearing the same old blue coat. Her calm face made their anger look almost childish. One tall noble said, "Your Majesty, this has gone too far. The people speak of this worker's coat as if it were a crown. They forget who you are." Another added, "They say you walk with him in the gardens, that you dine with a common man." "The court is beginning to lose its order." Leora listened quietly. When they were done, she said in a steady voice, "If the people see kindness as power, then perhaps we have built a better order than before." A few nobles looked away, embarrassed. Only a few older ones nodded in silent respect. Evan was not present in that meeting, but news spread fast. By midday, he heard whispers everywhere. Servants avoided his eyes. Some people smiled kindly, but others looked suspicious, like he had done something shameful. When he passed by the royal hall, 2 guards stepped aside and nodded. He asked one quietly, "What did I do now?" The guard gave a small smile. "You gave her a coat, sir, and somehow you gave this whole place a reason to argue." That evening, while Evan checked the power systems near the courtyard, Leora appeared beside him. She had come alone with only a hood over her hair. The same blue coat hung from her shoulders, looking slightly faded now from so many days of use. "They are angry with me," she said softly. "They think a queen should never look simple. They think wearing this means I have forgotten my place." "I could take it back," Evan said, half joking, though his voice sounded uncertain. Leora shook her head. "No, you cannot. It has grown to mean something more." She looked out toward the city lights. "When I walk through the streets, people greet me not as a distant ruler, but as Leora. They smile and wave. They feel close again. I cannot undo that." Evan sighed, then let them talk. Words melt faster than snow. She turned to him with a faint smile. "You always say something simple that makes everything feel clear." In the following weeks, some members of the court tried to turn the whispers into real trouble. They spread small lies that Evan had been paid secretly by the queen, that he was trying to influence decisions. They even suggested that the coat was a sign of favoritism. But when workers and farmers heard this, they laughed. "That man gave her his coat," they said. "That is not corruption. That is what our mothers taught us, to share warmth." The argument grew so loud that Leora finally decided to speak publicly. She sent messengers to the city square, calling everyone to gather one bright afternoon. Evan tried to stand quietly among the workers, but people recognized him and pointed. Children climbed on fences to see him, felt embarrassed, but there was no escape. When the queen appeared on the balcony above the square, the crowd fell silent. The coat flapped lightly in the wind. She raised her voice so all could hear. "My people," she said, "long ago I was told that a ruler's strength lies in symbols. Perhaps that is true. I have chosen this one because it came from a good man who shared without expecting reward. I wear it because it reminds me that leadership should mean service. You do not bow to cloth or to crowns. You bow to courage, honesty, and kindness." For a moment, no one spoke. Then a deep cheer rose from the crowd. Workers waved their tools. Women lifted their children. Men shouted her name. The sound carried through the city like music after a long silence. Evan stood among them, watching with mixed feelings, part awe, part disbelief. He had never dreamed that something so ordinary, a coat meant to block the wind, could become a message of hope for thousands. After the speech, Leora came down from the balcony to walk among the crowd. She found Evan standing near a fountain. People stepped aside for her. "He did not have to do that," he said quietly. "Now, they'll write songs about a coat." "Let them," she replied. Songs last longer than cold. That evening, as the palace lamps flickered on, the two of them sat together on the same balcony where they had once watched the snow fall. In the deepening dusk, the city glowed warmly below. Evan broke the silence first. "Do you ever wish you could just disappear for a day? Forget the crown? Forget the rules?" She thought for a moment. "I used to, but lately I feel that the crown does not weigh as much. Maybe it is because of this coat. Maybe it is because of you." He smiled faintly. If that is true, then the coat deserves a royal medal. Leora laughed for the first time that day. Her laughter echoed softly in the cold air, much like the first time he had heard it long ago. For that moment, they forgot the gossip, the nobles, and the rules of the world. They were just two people who had found peace where it once seemed impossible. The wind carried her laughter down the terraces, and people below looked up and smiled. They did not hear the words, but they knew what it meant. Something had changed in their queen, and in their hearts they all felt a little warmer. Years passed, and the kingdom of Faldara became bright again. The scars of war faded little by little, replaced by roads, gardens, and laughter. Streets once broken now hummed with the sound of trade and travelers. The name of Queen Leora was spoken with love, and the story of the engineer who gave her his coat had turned into a legend that parents told their children at bedtime. Evan Carter stayed in Faldara longer than he ever planned. At first, he thought he would return home as soon as the power systems were complete. But every time he prepared to leave, something made him stay. Maybe it was the feeling of purpose, or maybe it was a queen who still smiled when she saw him. The coat, now patched in places, still hung on her shoulders most days. It had become part of her, like her crown or her calm voice. One clear morning, Evan stood at the city edge, where new towers rose against the blue sky. The people there greeted him warmly. They called him the man who brought light, or sometimes simply, the coat giver. He always laughed at that name. When he looked back at the city, he felt both proud and wistful. Peace felt strange after years of noise and work. That afternoon, he received a letter, sealed with the royal mark, announced that the queen wanted to meet him before his planned journey home. His ship was ready to leave in 2 days to return to the southern ports. He folded the letter slowly, knowing this would be their last quiet conversation. When evening came, the palace looked different. Lanterns glowed along the corridors, and the gentle wind carried the scent of flowers from the new gardens. Leora waited for him in the same marble courtyard where they had first met years ago. She was still wearing the navy coat, though the edges were frayed and faded. Somehow it made her look even more human and kind. "Mr. Carter," she said softly, when he approached, "it seems your journey is calling again." He nodded. "Yes, Your Majesty, everything is working now. You hardly need an engineer anymore." She smiled. "I could argue that I will always need one who reminds me of simple things." He looked down, unsure what to say. "I never expected my visit to last this long, or that one small act would change so much." Leora stepped closer, her expression gentle. "Sometimes what is small to one heart can be a miracle to many. You taught me that warmth and kindness carry their own power. The nobles learned too, though some still grumble." He laughed softly. "They will recover. They always do." They walked slowly across the courtyard, past rose vines and glowing lanterns. The air was cool, the same kind of evening when he had first given her his coat. The memory made them both smile. "Do you remember that night?" she asked. "How could I forget?" Nearly froze to death, pretending to be generous. Her laughter filled the air like music. "And yet you kept smiling." "I thought then that you were strange but honest." "I was terrified," he admitted. "No one tells an engineer how to act around a queen." "I think you did just fine," she replied. They stopped by the fountain where moonlight shimmered on the water. The sound of the running stream filled the short silence between them. Leora reached up and touched the corner of the coat. "This coat has seen more of life than any royal robe," she said. "It has traveled through meetings, storms, and laughter. People bow to it in the streets, you know." "I've heard the stories," Evan said with a teasing smile. "I only hope they don't expect me to give another one away. My sewing skills are terrible." Her smile slowly faded into something softer. "I would give this back before you leave," she said. "But I fear the people would not forgive me. It belongs to them now." He nodded. "And keep it, Your Majesty. Let it stay a part of what you've built. In a way, I suppose it already belongs here more than anywhere else." A quiet wind moved through the garden. For a long moment they said nothing more. The silence was kind but heavy, the kind that comes when words are not strong enough. Evan finally bowed and said, "It has been an honor to serve you, and an even greater honor to know you." Leora looked at him, her eyes calm but bright. "The honor has been mine. No crown or council can give what friendship gives." When he turned to leave, She called out softly, "Mr. Carter." He stopped. "When you look at the stars out there, think of this city. Think of this coat. We will remember you." He smiled quietly. "And I will never be far away." 2 days later, the ship rose into the clear morning sky. From the deck, Evan looked back at Faldara spread below him like a jewel in the light. On the highest balcony stood Queen Leora, the navy coat shining faintly in the sun. She raised her hand, and he waved back until the city turned small and distant. In time, historians wrote her story, and every telling began the same way. Once, during the rebuilding of Faldara, a young engineer gave his coat to the queen as a casual act of kindness. She wore it to remind the world that compassion can rule better than power. Children grew up playing at being the queen and the engineer, copying the moment he placed the coat around her shoulders. And though Evan never returned, his name remained a gentle echo in every home that carried warmth again. Far away, whenever the wind grew cold, he would pull his own new coat close and smile to himself, remembering her laughter and the strange miracle of a single ordinary gift that had made the whole world feel kind again.